Hello, my name is Kaylee.
Hello, my name is Alizey.
And today we're going to be talking about a very heartbreaking topic, which is sex trafficking.
Sex trafficking is the action or practice of illegally transporting people from one country or area to another for the purpose of sexual exploitation.
Currently, sex trafficking is an issue that needs to be changed and needs to be shown more to our society. Not only has it impacted women all over the world, but also men.
Sex trafficking has been around for thousands of years, but the subject was officially brought up to the political view during the 1900s.
Sex trafficking began to happen because in the 1980s, women were protesting about prostitution and pornography. Once people ignored this fact, they decided to go further than prostitution, and people began to sex traffic.
Unfortunately, sex trafficking isn't something that happens locally or that only one specific country or state does. It's a worldwide issue that's been going on for many years. There's no exact state or country that is only involved. Sex traffickers unfortunately take their victims throughout most of the world to be sexually exploited.
Victims of sex trafficking are affected deeply emotionally and mentally. For years, there have been sexually abused and people that don't get freedom at all. They become numb to the pain that sex trafficking brings upon them. After they are free, it's harder for them to live days thinking nothing of their trauma, which can often lead to tragedies.
This affects not only one country, but it affects the whole world. In American history, we have seen similar patterns during the time period in which people were being treated as slaves. Some patterns of dehumanization are being treated as if they're not humans, but treated as if they were machines.
Some of the patterns of dehumanization is when a person is in the process of being sex trafficked. The person is basically being forced to do things that they don't want to, and this just causes them being stripped from their identity.
Something that we want to touch on is actually what gets taken away from them that makes it dehumanization, which is their right to live freely. They're put under so many conditions that make them tied to the sex traffickers, and they manipulate these women and kids and children with heartbreaking stuff that eventually these people fear. So they practically are taken away from their normal life, and their free will is taken away. The rates of death are 40.3 million people worldwide, and 20 million are women and girls.
So, in order to get insight in what it feels like to be in the sex trafficking business, we contacted a survivor named Sandra Wawaruntu. And before we start with the questions from our interview, we want to start with a bit of her background story.
So Sandra arrived in the U.S. hoping to start a new career in the hotel industry. Instead, she found she had been trafficked into a world of prostitution and sexual slavery, forced drug taking, and violence. It was months before she was able to turn the tables on her persecutors. She arrived in the United States the first week of June 2001 when her hometown was hit with the Asian financial crisis. So she had to find a way to make money to support her daughter, her 3-year-old daughter at the time. And she started to look for work overseas. And this is when she saw an ad in a newspaper for work in the hospitality industry. And she applied, and they made her fill out so many requirements, and she ended up getting the job. She arrived once she was granted the job, she arrived at JFK with 4 women and other men, and that's when this tragedy that she didn't think she would be in became a reality. So we asked her these questions.
So the first question we asked her was, how did this tragedy emotionally affect her?
She said it was like I was numb, unable to cry, overwhelmed with sadness, anger, disappointment. I just went through the motions, doing what I was told and trying hard to survive.
How do you want to help others cope through what you went through? And she quoted,
I have decided to do everything I can to help other victims of trafficking. I started an organization, Mentari, which helps survivors reintegrate into community and connect them to job markets.
Another question that we asked was, what were the conditions that you were put in? And she quoted,
because I was compliant, I was not beaten by my traffickers. But they only fed me plain rice soup with a few pickles, and I was often high on drugs. The constant threat of violence and the need to stay on high alert was something that was very exhausting.
what were the compensations that you were given if you followed the rules that they would say?
Because I was compliant, I was not beaten by my traffickers. I was their priority for 45 minutes, and I was their property for 45 minutes, and I had to do what they said or they hurt me.
What were some of the things that distracted and kept you busy when going through this?
She quotes, I also kept a diary, something I had done since I was little, writing in a mix of Indonesian, English, Japanese, and symbols. I try to record what I did, where I went, and how many people were with me. I kept track of dates too, as best as I could. It was difficult because inside the brothels, there was no way for me to know if it was day or night.
Another question that we asked was, how did you feel after escaping and knowing that you were finally safely freed? How did you cope with this afterwards?
When she explains that when she finally escaped, she actually went to a police station and told her story, and that's where she got to trap her sexual traffickers. And this is what she explains when she sees everything happening. Let me tell you that when I saw those women emerge from the building naked except for towels wrapped around them, it was but the greatest moment of my life. Giving birth is a miracle, yes, but nothing compares to the emotions I experienced as my friends gained their freedom. In the flashing blue and red lights of the police cars, we were dancing, yelling, and screaming for joy. The way that she says she coped with it afterwards was happiness eludes her, and perhaps it always will. But and she quotes that I have gotten better at dealing with my flashbacks. I love to sing in a choir, and I have found raising my children to be very healing. My little girl is a big girl now, a teenager, and I have a 9-year-old son too. I've decided to do everything I can to help other victims of trafficking. I started an organization which will eventually help survivors reintegrate into the community and where they belong. After having this very detailed and emotional conversation with Sandra. She really enlightened us to think about the freedom that we have, and that we don't have to go through such a tragedy like that because of people like her, people that tell their stories, and people that aren't afraid of all the horrible things that they might be said to. So this is why we think that an enlightening moment that we reached during our conversation was
when she explained her escape and when her traffickers were getting arrested. And with this, some of the things that we learned
that can help us
prevent this from happening
or continuing to happen is
do what Sandra did, which was speak about her experience with others and work with community groups, raise awareness, and in general just support others that are going through this, and create a
platform where she can speak about what she went through and how it personally affected her. Not a lot of people who often go through this tragedy explain it or talk about it because it's something that helps them. It's something that hurts them, and that isn't really on their desire to talk about. They just want to brush it off and look forward. But a way to prevent this from happening and continuing to happen is helping other girls know that it's okay to reach out, and it's okay to say that they're being sex trafficked or that anything of this is happening to them.
Which is why there are many resources which are victim assistance programs, victim compensation programs, violent against program funds, and runaway/homeless youth programs
that can help these women and girls reach out to people and tell their story.
Overall, we would really like to thank Sandra for taking her time in telling us her story and trying to help out other people out there, especially women, and just letting people know that there's people that really want to help them, and there's a lot of resources out there that could benefit them in getting out in the situation that they're in.